All right. Thank you for coming to attend this workshop. This workshop is called Proven and Surprising Reasons Why Your Child Will Not Eat Their Vegetables Tonight. I'm so happy and so thankful that you came today. Assure you that I'll try to give you as much value as you can possibly get and hope that you take away something new and something different that you can start implementing in your child's life immediately. Before we begin, I just want you to get the best viewing experience possible. So if you can just go on the little setting on your YouTube um, video and go to the quality and just put the highest quality possible, whether it's 720p or 1080p, um, because some of the videos and the images that will be coming forward, they will be a little blurry if the quality is a little low. So I want you to have the best viewing experience as possible. Um, Also, I wanted to inform you and let you know that this is an interactive workshop. Uh, the reason why I call this a workshop and not a lecture or a webinar, it's because in a workshop, it's a give and take. You learn from your experiences, and this is about your child. So I want you to be interactive and give me feedback along the way. I do have questions in the middle, quite a few questions. So I want you to start getting active on the live chat so that I can respond to you based on what you say. Now, I know you must be busy right now, especially this time of the day, time in the evening. You must be busy with your kids. But I want you to be able to concentrate fully on this so you can focus on one thing. We are multitaskers, I know that. So please try to silence your phones or put them on vibrate and close any other tabs that are open, because I would like your full attention so that you can find the best solutions for your child. So before we begin, please go on the live chat box and enter your name and the age of your child so that we can begin. You must be wondering who I am and who this person is and why should I listen to her. So before I begin, let me just tell you a little bit about myself and why I'm doing this workshop. My name is Shaista Zahiruddin. I am a registered dietitian. I'm seeing a lot of parents and children lately in my practice, and I wanted to build a workshop so that I can address a lot of these issues head on with a lot of people. So my education background is that I have a master's in nutrition and food science and a bachelor's, of course. I did that in Wayne State University in Michigan, USA. And then I joined a coordinated program in dietetics, which includes a 2-year internship program in clinical settings like hospitals, nursing homes, neonatal centers, ICUs, and so on. So one of the biggest focuses of mine was in the neonatal center. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the neonatal center is where mostly children who are prematurely born or who have some developmental issues are treated. And so one of my work as an intern was to help feed children using tube feedings and intravenous feedings and transition them back to health so that they could go back to their family. And so that was a very interesting experience for me. So when I moved on, I'm currently doing my own practice, and I see a lot of children and families there. But a little bit about what a registered dietitian is, if you're not familiar, a registered dietitian or a dietitian is a protected title by law. So some people like to call me a nutritionist, which is fine if you want to do it, but a nutritionist would be someone and anyone who has taken some courses in nutrition, like or certification like holistic nutrition or anything like that, they can call themselves nutritionist. They don't necessarily have to do that, but for someone to call themselves a dietitian, they need to have a degree in nutrition and they have to complete at least a year or two of clinical internship. So I am a healthcare professional, and I have to maintain my credentials, which I do. I am maintaining both my American and Canadian credentials. The regulatory body that maintains that is the College of Dietitians of Ontario in Canada, and in the US, it's the Commission of Dietetic Registration. So basically, what all of this means is that they regulate everything that I practice. They are the one who gave me the title, registered dietitian, and they make sure everything I do and practice would be based on current evidence-based guidelines. So at least that way you know that you can trust me, because I will only be giving you information that is current, that is based on enough evidence to say that it works. And most of the strategies that I'll be showing you here are things that are being clinically practiced by a lot of other professionals as well. So one of the reasons I love talking about this topic is because I have some personal experiences with this. My brother was a very picky eater when he was growing up, and he was so picky and so finicky that he would not eat anything except for cucumbers. And he would not eat, like, I'm from a South Asian background, so we eat a lot of rice and lentils and all that stuff, but he would not touch anything, he would not eat anything other than cucumbers. So my mom had to struggle a lot. She tried so many different tactics to try to get him to eat something more than a cucumber, because cucumber doesn't really have many nutrients. It's pretty much water. So my mom always worried that he would starve, and she would try so many different tactics to try to feed him, but none of them worked. So she had to resort to force feeding him, because that was the only option. So she would stuff food in his mouth to try to get him to eat. And it was quite challenging, of course, and he used to hate it. He never used to swallow those foods. He would just keep chewing them, like this video picture here. He would just keep chewing it, but he would not swallow it. So my mom would try this one tactic where she would push the cheek where the food is, so that she push it in so that he would try to swallow it. But instead, what he would do is put it on the other cheek, and he would push it on the other cheek, and then my mom had to try push it from that cheek. So it just went back and forth, until he finally getting tired or frustrated. So it took a lot of challenge to try to get to feed him, from so many different tactics. And after maybe 2 or 3 hours of trying to feed him, he would finally then just throw it all up. Just like, so this is not my brother, just so you know, but he would just throw up everything that it took my mom almost 3 hours even to feed him, after all the tactics that she tried to use. And he would just throw all of it up, and then he would end up in the same place again. Had no other option but to just give him cucumber to help him, at least he would get something before he went to bed. So that was one experience that I had growing up, which was pretty intense. So that really stuck with me. Now I have a relative of mine, actually my cousin, who has a child on the spectrum, and he's an extremely picky eater himself. He eats only a very, very short list of foods. Maybe you can count the number of foods that he eats on your fingers, because that's how little he eats. And most of the foods that he does eat is candy only, and his mom has resorted to just of giving in to him and just give him what he wants, because that's the only way he eats now. And she is trying to put him on this gluten-free, casein-free diet. And just imagine, if for a child who is already not eating any foods, then adding on top of that another restriction of a gluten-free or a casein-free diet, it's a very big challenge. So I've been working with her as well to get him into that. So that's sort of a little bit about my personal experience. But professionally, as a dietitian, as I've been practicing for about 5 years now, I see my focus is a lot on pediatrics. I see both the parents and children. Um, and a lot of parents who do come to me, they're either trying to help their child grow, eat better, of course. Most of them are worried that he or she might skip their growth spurt because they're not eating enough. And some of them actually do come to me worried that they are eating too much, or at least too much of the junk foods, and they might become obese. So I kind of deal with both types of parents. And it is a real struggle. A lot of the times, the parents who do end up coming to me, they have been struggling for a long, long time. And usually, since they're either very small or infants, and they hope that they try all these tactics on their own, and they hope that the child will outgrow these things when they go to school, especially when they start having more friends and see other people eating healthier foods. They would hopefully outgrow all of this, but it usually doesn't happen. Then now, when the child is about 7, 8, or 10 years old, the parent feels like it's about time that they have to get some help, because everything that they tried just hasn't worked, and they have to come and meet a professional. So they usually end up coming to see me, um, to help resolve these issues. So I've seen a lot of this, and it's usually a struggle. It's quite a challenge at that age, especially. But the solution is much more simpler than you might think. And that's sort of why I wanted to do this workshop, is because parents have been struggling for such a long time. A lot of you have been going through this on your own. Um, it is a problem, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. Unless there's something that you can do about it, it just keeps getting worse. So that's sort of why I wanted to do this workshop. Another reason that I thought this topic is really important to touch right now, especially for parents, is because a lot of adults come to see me. Since I'm a dietitian, a lot of adults come to see me for weight loss or for some eating disorders. I usually counsel them and ask, we try to figure out what the triggers are, where things start changing. And usually it's a dependence. Most adults who come to me for weight loss or even weight gain, they have some kind of dependence, usually emotional. And we try to get deeper, and it always comes back to the childhood. Almost 80 to 90% of my clients, when we get deeper, it always comes back to their childhood and their eating issues in their childhood. And so I thought it's important to address these issues right now head on. Since you are a parent of a younger child, you have opportunities to help your child um, improve. So the goals for this workshop is to get to the roots of the problems, tell you a little bit about what's working and what's not working, um, in feeding children, and how to do it your own way. So I'm going to give you some guidelines and tools that you can start using and implementing, so that you can fix your problems by yourself. And by doing all of this, hopefully you'll raise healthier eaters and hopefully enjoy the process. While doing it, a lot of parents are struggling and not enjoying the feeding time. So hopefully I'll give you some tips that you will eventually enjoy the process of feeding your child. Now, who this is for, I guess I've already said this a few by now, but this is mostly for parents who are struggling, again, to feed their child, whether they're eating too much, too little, or maybe just eating too much junk food. So this is really for all of you. Now I'm going to slow down here. I usually get too excited and I talk too fast. And so if you want me to slow down or maybe speak further or closer, let me know, because I know I have a very low volume. If you want me to change anything, let me know. And I also say a lot of ums and you knows, so bear with me. I'm going to try not to. But if there's anything that you want me to do, um, talk slower or faster or louder, please let me know right now. So for Any of you who are going to stick all the way to the end, I have a special bonus for you. So stay tuned all the way to the end. I promise it'll be worth it for you. So, picky eating is generally defined or described as when a child eats a food one day, but then they do not eat it the next day, or they eat some foods from the things that you've offered, but not everything, and they eat a lot one day, but not so much the next. So this letter C, the point number C is a little different from point number A, where A is the child eats a certain amount, certain type of food, and then not they won't eat that same type of food next day, so they just stop liking that same food all of a sudden. And then the C is where they eat a lot in general, like they're really hungry some days, and then they're not that hungry anymore some days. So that's what that is. And then the fourth is they taste food. They taste the food, but they don't necessarily enjoy it, and they usually reject it and just don't want to try it anymore or never want to have it anymore. So these are picky eating behaviors. So I would like you to put in the live chat if your child does any of these from the following. If he or she does, please write yes and just write the letter corresponding to it, whether it's A, B, C, or D. If it's all, just put A, B, C, D. Um, please put that in for now, and I'll move on from there. All right, so picky eating is typically it's really normal. So all those things I told you in the previous slide, all of these are completely normal. Almost every single child is considered picky at least once in their life, and about more than 50% of children in today's world have some kind of eating problems. So that could be, being extremely selective or picky or any different kinds of eating problems. But these 50% are only the parents who have reported that their child has some eating problem. A lot of you are probably going through this on your own, and struggling by yourself to feed your children. And this 50% might not really be true. In general, I probably expect it to be around 80 or 85%. So a lot of children have some kind of eating problems. Now, there's an or more finicky, extreme version of picky eating, sometimes also called finicky or fussy. That's when a child gets upset in the presence of new foods. He or she eats from a very short list of acceptable foods, and that list keeps getting smaller and smaller. And they have difficulty eating away from home, especially at school when you're not around, or maybe going to a dinner party. Some parents feel like they have to feed their child before they go out, because they know that they'll not eat or behave outside, and they either won't eat or will eat way too much of the unhealthy food. So they want to try to feed them before they go out. And then there's this last option, last category, where children display tantrums or behaviors during mealtime. It's very difficult to manage them, especially around mealtime, because they get upset in the presence of foods, and they just have a lot of more behaviors and tantrums around that time. So if you can take a few seconds and just let me know yes or no if your child falls under any of these categories. And if yes, just type the letter corresponding to it. These finicky behaviors are becoming more and more common these days. And this is especially more prevalent in children who have special needs, especially those who have some developmental delays or motor or sensory issues. So when something like this happens, it's always a good thing. When your child behaves differently in such ways, it's always good to dig deeper. If you were coming to see me one-on-one, I would really be sitting with you and maybe going through your entire child's history and their growth charts. I would definitely ask you to or speak with your pediatrician to give me their growth charts. Even if your child is 14 years old or 10 years old, it's always good to go all the way back in the past just to figure things out, because when you go in history, there's a lot of things you can look into and find out. So that would be definitely something I would do. And since this is a workshop and I'm not seeing you one on one, I want you to start thinking about it like that, and you doing that for yourself. So you now, since you're here, I want to show you that you want to become the therapist. Come in my shoes, and if look at your child from a different angle. Since I, yes, am an expert in nutrition and child nutrition and feeding and all that stuff, but you are the expert of your child, so you know your child, your family, your situation better than anyone else, and I completely respect that. So I'm basically giving you power in trying to help you figure out what's going on. So, and when we begin to troubleshoot or problem solve this way, you can get so many answers. So, what I'd like you to do here, to take a few seconds to think about this. Now, you have a worksheet. I sent everybody who signed up for this workshop a worksheet, but if you don't have that with you, you can go on www.modestnutrition.com/workshop. So that's one word, modest nutrition/workshop, and you can get you'll get the worksheet in your email immediately. So I want you to start following that. Just put those answers on the worksheet as well. So what I want you to think about is, what age did your child start displaying these behaviors? And for most children, it usually they're not born with this unless your child was premature or had some issues early on. It may have been the case, but in many cases it's not. So I want you to think about this. If you want to write this down in the live chat, please write it down. It's going to be private. I'm not going to share it with anybody. This live chat will go away. It won't be in the comments of the YouTube. So if you want to write that down, just start to think about, what age did your child started to display eating behaviors or picky eating behaviors? So the typical age for most children when they start behaving or having picky eating behaviors, especially towards food, is between 12 to 18 months of age. And this is typical. I'm not saying that this happens with every child, but for a lot of children, this is around that age. But I want you to think about it again to see if that was relevant to you, or if not, what other age it was that they started doing these behaviors. So when you think about that, I want you to also think about what was happening around that time. Was your child sick maybe around that time, or did you change locations or homes, or like did you change their school, or maybe did you yourself change job, or was there any life trauma going on around that time, like some maybe a death in the family or a divorce or something like that? Or was it that your child was diagnosed with something? There's always something usually going on around that time. So I want you to start troubleshooting and remembering what happened or what was going on. If your child has been picky from the very beginning, it may have been that your child was maybe premature or had colic as they were children. So try to think about it. Put that letter down and let me know if any of these things were happening around that time. I know it doesn't make any sense right now, but it'll make some more sense when I go on and talk about it. But I want you to start thinking about it again. So if you notice, a lot of these scenarios that I have mentioned, they have really nothing to do with food necessarily. Most of the situations they were around the environment of the child, but not necessarily around the food. But this is usually the time children start behaving differently or acting differently. You may have possibly noticed that they started eating a lot less, or maybe they started losing a lot of weight all of a sudden. Sometimes maybe the opposite. Maybe they start eating a lot more, or maybe just being sneaky about it and just eating a lot more foods, or the foods that they shouldn't be eating. or they just became extremely selective and just completely stopped eating the foods that they once really loved. So something was definitely going on around that time, and usually these are some of the situations that arise. And when things like that happen, obviously, we as a parent, we get alarmed, and we don't understand what's going on, and we want to manage this or help to fix the problems for our children, and just help figure out what's going on and try to manage it. And there's so many different ways parents go about it, and a lot of the times, told, a lot of people have a lot of say in how to parent. So a lot of people would probably be telling you what to do, how to do, how to get them to eat. So this is one of the most common things that parents start doing when children start becoming picky or finicky, is that they start encouraging their child to just try a bite. So just try a bite or just taste it. It's not gonna hurt you. Just try a bite, and that's where it starts pretty innocent. And then it moves on, and say your child rejects it, and then they move on, and the parents have to resort to insisting and begging, maybe, just try it, it's okay, just do it, it's fine. Or there's so many different ways that parents try to insist the children to eat a little more or a little bit more of this or that. And then you go on to try playing games. Like, it depends obviously on the age of your child, but a lot of parents try playing games like the airplane game to make food fun for children so that they enjoy it and eat it. And then the next stage is usually, even if they don't listen to all of that, then parents start talking about food and talking about the nutrients and the benefits that the food has. So for example, reminding them about Popeye, if that's what your child sees, probably not now, but getting more spinach in will make you stronger, or getting milk in will make your bones stronger, or anything like that, will help you grow taller. And for children who have constipation, a lot of parents, remind them that this will improve your bowels and stuff, and all that stuff. So these are all general things that parents do. And then we move on to applauding and praising the child for doing a good job with eating. And sometimes give stickers or treats, even money maybe, just to give them an incentive to try that vegetable or that food that they're not eating and you want them to eat. So these are very typical tactics. They're not necessarily tactics. These are just encouragements and rewards that parents are trying to do to help their child eat better. So I want you to tell me if you have done this. Any of these, it doesn't really matter which one, if you have done any of these, and if you've had any success with trying these strategies. If yes, just put A and say, yes, it's working, and I'm still depending on this to get my child to eat that food. Or if it worked for a while, just put down the number of months or weeks that it worked for you. Or you can just put D and say, no, eating just got worse. It just never worked for me. So just take a few seconds and write that down, just so I know where you are at. And then we'll move on. Okay, so then say all these tactics that you've tried don't work, and usually then you have to take another step. Usually a lot of people also give you that advice that I don't care how you do it, just get them to eat, because you are worried that they're not getting all their nutrients and their vitamins and all that stuff, and you want them to eat better. And since you've tried encouraging them and rewarding them and reminding them, it just never worked. So then you want to take another step, and a lot of parents then go on to the next stage, which is serving vegetables first, or foods that they want first, or just giving them an incentive by withholding dessert. They basically said that you have to finish this before you can have your dessert, or maybe you are withholding a TV show that they really want, or a toy, or something that they really want to do, and you're withholding it because you want them to eat that certain food that they just don't want to eat, and they're really stubborn about not eating. So you're trying so many different tactics. A lot of parents do this, and after, even if this doesn't work, then a lot of parents also move on to forcing their child. um, Maybe punishing. I know punishing sounds like a harsh word, but something along the lines of giving them a timeout, or just, if they have other siblings, then they just shame them, maybe in a way, saying that, um, see your sister or your brother, they're not eating this, and stuff like that. So a lot of parents do this as well. And also force feeding, or hand feeding, sorry. A lot of parents feel like, if I let my child eat, again, this depends on the age of the child, but if I don't let my child eat, then sorry, if I let my child eat, he'll not eat anything, so I might as well feed him or her. And that's when a lot of parents, start hand feeding their children, and also force feeding, like physically forcing food down the throat, just like my mom did with my brother. He wouldn't eat, so my mom had to force him, because you're worried that he or she, they'll starve, they'll, what are they going to do? They're not getting the nutrients. This is the only way, and a lot of parents are depending on this strategy to get their child to eat. So my question for you is, if you've done any of these, which I'm assuming some of you have these worked in the long run? Like, have you seen that your child started eating those vegetables now, or those foods that you are trying to feed them? Are they eating them or not? Have you seen any success? If yes, please type A, B, C, or D. Yes, it works, and I'm still depending on it. Or no, it's getting worse. And after trying all of those tactics about forcing and bribing and withholding food and all that stuff, there's one of two categories parents fall under. So either parents give up or give in. So they just hope that they'll come around, and sorry, and what they end up some parents end up doing is just giving up and deciding, okay, you know what, they're not going to eat. I know everything I've tried is not working, so I just have to secretly sneak those things in their foods. And I know a lot of you might be looking up recipes and tactics and tricks to get this done, to secretly sneak foods in your child's meal somehow, so that they don't realize they're eating those foods. Because now, because if they know you're going to give them a vegetable that they don't want, they're not going to eat it. So you have to sneak it in. So a lot of parents do this. They try to sneak and secretly hide foods um, in their child's lunches or stuff like that. Like, for example, adding spinach or kale to smoothies and so on and so forth. There's so many ways that parents are doing that. They tell me that they do that. So that's one thing a lot of parents do. And then there's this other thing that parents end up doing, is giving in to the child. So they make extra meals. So just give in. They basically think that, okay, now that all these strategies don't work, I'll just have to give them what they want, because at least they have something. I mean, I can't, just like the example I told you earlier about my cousin, she just has to resort to giving in to her child, because then since he or she's so stubborn about it, they and they're not eating any other vegetable or anything, at least they're getting something. So they start making extra meals. If you have very picky children and you get tired of making the same meals over and over, you're probably making two different meals, one for your entire family and one for your picky child. And if you're more than one picky child, then absolutely you are probably making a lot more than just two meals. So this is a struggle. I know, I've seen a lot of parents going through this. I am counseling a lot of parents right now going through this. So I know you're tired. You probably think or feel that you've tried almost everything you can possibly do, but you still haven't seen any success, and you just don't know what else to do, because I mean, you just want your child to eat better. So yes, that's true. So you might have tried all of these techniques, or at least some of them, and you just failed. And the bottom line is, if you've failed, there's a reason why it's failed or why it's not working. And it's because these strategies just don't work. There's enough evidence, enough scientific research going on behind this to tell you that none of these strategies work. Now, I know you must be shocked, surprised, and maybe angry that why? I mean, what? Why doesn't this work? Now, I mean, this is probably the entire library of all the things you learned or heard that you should do. And you've probably tried all of them, or at least some of them, or at least maybe you're contemplating trying some of these strategies because you think they'll work because parents are telling you about it, other people, other blogs are talking about it. The truth is, it just doesn't work. The science is there. We've been following kids for 16, 20 years, for a long, long time, just to see how things work out later on, and they just don't work. So, but there's still good news. I know you must be frustrated that, oh, this doesn't work, then what does? There's a way out, and I'll tell you a little bit about that. But before I dive in, I have to give you a quick biology lesson just so you appreciate the situation and just understand what this is all about. So I promise it won't be technical. It will be pretty easy to swallow and understand. It'll be very relevant and relatable. So the the truth is that I'm sure you already know this, but we are all born with a gift, and that gift is the ability to regulate our own mechanisms to bring about a perfect balance in our body. So our body maintains a strict and tight balance on everything, whether it's energy or food or whatever. So we and we go through so many different phases in our body, in not just our growth and development, in our metabolism, and our needs, our caloric needs and our nutrient needs fluctuate year by year, with every age, but with month by month, day by day, even hour by hour. So when we are sleeping, we need other things are going on in our body, and then when we're awake and maybe before breakfast, we have other needs and other things that are going on in our body. So we have so many different functions. Our body is so complex that we are always going through some kind of change and development throughout, even in adults. So for children, this is significant because children are growing so fast. Their metabolisms are so fast, but they keep changing a lot. So some days you notice your child is growing too fast, and then there are times when they're not growing much, but there's still a lot of stuff going on. So if you remember your infant, um, he or she grew really fast for a short period of time, and then they stopped growing for a very long period of time, and then that keeps happening because different things are going on. In the beginning, when they're growing taller, that's when they're building bones and they need more calcium. And times when growth is slow, they're not technically growing taller, but their brains are developing, so they need fat at that time or other vitamins to support the development of those nerves and those muscles and those fats, of those brain cells and all that stuff. So we are going through different phases, and same for your child. So we need different things for each phase and each function in our body. So I'm just going to give you examples. This is one nutrient, one mineral that is extremely important in our body, just like many other and vitamins. But I'm going to just use this one as one of the most favorite examples of both, and it should give you a good picture of what I'm trying to say here. Calcium is important not just for bones and teeth, but also to help you in moving your muscles and moving through the nerves to other parts of the body. So calcium is needed for so many different functions in our body. And the calcium is very, very tightly regulated, very strictly maintained. The balance is strictly maintained in our body. So obviously, if your child is going through a growth spurt, the milk and the nutrients that they're getting from food sources of calcium, which include milk and broccoli and other fruits and vegetables and other foods. So if they're going through a growth spurt, their body has a mechanism that tells the intestines to absorb double or a lot more, like maybe 50% more or 60 or even 80% more of that calcium, because it needs it for the growth and the development. Now, let's say your child is not drinking enough milk, or even you, most adults don't drink milk. So let's say we have a need for calcium in our body. You're not a regular milk drinker or or person who eats or drinks foods that have high calcium. Your body is still going to make a way out of this, and it'll still get what it needs. So if your child eats candies and cookies and cakes, cakes have, because they're made of dairy, so they have some calcium in it. Cocoa has some calcium in it. So your body, even if you're not drinking milk or other sources of high calcium, it is still going to absorb all the calcium it can get, even up to 100% of all the calcium that's in that cake that your child is going to have. Your body and your child's body does that instinctively. It just makes you want to have foods that you naturally, or the nutrients that you would want, from one way or the other. It'll figure its way out. Your body will give your brain a signal that you need it, and your brain will tell your stomach and any other sensations that you need it, or you tend to crave those things. If you've heard of a condition called pica, this is more common in children. You see that in that condition, most children go eat things outside of food, like soil or detergent or something, because they need some nutrients. That's the body's way of telling the child that you need that, and they go and get that whatever vitamin or mineral that they're missing from those food sources, and they look attractive to them, they look tasty to them, because that's what they need. So that's the way our body works. Now let's say your child is a good, he or she drinks a lot of milk, and they're getting a lot of calcium foods in their diet, and they're very good about it. And you might be wondering, what if there's a he gets too much of it? Maybe he'll have a toxicity of it. There's an upper limit for all nutrients and all vitamins. You might be worried about that. But luckily for our body, it really doesn't matter. I'm talking about only food. I'm not talking about vitamins, multivitamins and mineral pills or supplements. I'm just talking about natural foods. So your body knows that if it knows that it doesn't need that calcium, it doesn't need all of that. So it really doesn't matter if your child drinks 10 cups of milk or 50 cups of milk. They are only going to absorb only as much as they need. So that basically means that when you're eating or drinking something that has a lot of a nutrient, it'll absorb less of it, especially if your body doesn't need it so much. But if your body needs it, it'll absorb all of it if it needs to. But then the opposite is also true. If you don't eat much at all, and your body is still capable to absorb everything it can get, and it'll make you feel that you want more of these things, and you usually tend to crave them. So basically what I'm trying to say here is that our body has systems in place that tells it exactly what and how much of the nutrients it needs. And this is true for all of the vitamins and minerals and other stuff in our body. And this is also true for calories. It's also true for fats. So your body has mechanisms in place that tells you how much food you need to have that appetite or the hunger and the sensations of satiety or feeling full, because your body has those systems in place. And we don't even have to think about it. Especially children, they don't have to think at all about it. But for adults too, we don't necessarily have to think about it. But for adults, we have gone through a lot of noise, a lot of things as we grow up, that we tend to not concentrate so much on our body and those signals. But for children, this is very strong. They have a much more in tuned system. They have much more um, they're more in tune with their systems and their bodies, and they know, they can feel it. They don't have to think about it. It just comes naturally to them. And so even if your child, say he or she is grown up, like even 10 years old or 15 years old, they still have that mechanism in them. Maybe it's less than it is for a child who is much smaller, but they still have that. And for a child who is developmentally delayed or has special needs, I just want you to know that even they have these systems in place. So, I mean, they are opening their eyes, they're smiling, they are walking, or, they think all of those things um, are taking certain needs, energy, and certain things to do all of that. So your child, even your special needs child, has these abilities in them. Now, I'm sure you must be wondering. So you said that my child has these systems. Okay, fine. If they do, if they really do, then why wouldn't my child be eating or even craving for those vegetables? Because if they're not getting all their nutrients, and which is actually in the fruits and vegetables or the things that they're not eating, shouldn't they be craving for it? Shouldn't they be wanting it more, not less? Because they're not having it at all? Does that make sense? I hope that question makes sense to you, because you must be wondering, I'm sure you must be wondering, um, if this is true, then why doesn't my child crave for vegetables and ask for them? Because that's like all those nutrients are in there, right? And the simple answer is that yes, they do have these systems in them. Even the child who hates vegetables and who doesn't touch them and look at them, even they have these systems in place. But there's more to the story than just that. Nothing is as simple as that. So yes, they do have these systems in place. They have the biology and the chemistry that the body tells them and they have to listen to. But then there's this other side of the story, which are the emotions and the feelings and the sensations and the psychology. So for children, they don't understand. They don't understand a lot of things, but they understand what they feel. They understand what they remember, how they feel. And that's more important to children than anything else. So the emotions are the second part of the equation that we have to talk about. Now, if we go back to the slide where I talked to you about the different tactics that we as parents are using, which include encouraging children or rewarding them or reminding them. I can give you an example without knowing what your situation is in particular, but let's say it's a vegetable that your child is not eating, and you just encourage them to try a bite, remind them, and try all these tactics that we talked about. Say your child's body is not at that phase when they need that nutrient. So, and this is normal, and this happens all the time. Maybe they have enough stores that they don't really need those vitamins, and this is natural. Do you remember earlier on when I talked about how picky eating, how it's normal for children to crave a lot of food someday and then not so much the next? So similar to energy, same things with nutrients and vitamins and everything else. They might not need something one day and they might need a lot of it the next day. So by you trying to encourage your child to eat a vegetable and that they don't want, that maybe their body is not asking for, so they just don't want it, and then excuse me, you are trying to tell them what they want, then they get conflicted. The children get confused and conflicted with what and who to listen to, because on the one hand, their body is telling them they are eating a lot, that they don't need something. So on the one hand, their body's saying you don't need this vitamin, so they don't want it. But then you are telling them to confused if they should listen to them, the instincts that they have, or to listen to you. Over time, they feel a little bad about themselves. They kind of feel unworthy, that because they're not being heard or they're not being understood. And this is a little tricky for children because they get confused and they don't know, especially younger children. This is very significant for them. And then when we move on to the more aggressive ways of trying to get children to eat food that they don't want, then you're forcing them to and overwhelming them, or you're overwhelming their psychology, but even their natural body's tendencies to regulate their own intake. So you basically, if you are stuffing food in your child's mouth, say they don't need those nutrients or those calories at that time, by you force feeding it to them, your child's body, first of all, won't absorb all those stuff. So it's kind of going for to waste in some ways. But even if your body is forced to absorb all of that, your body has to find unnatural ways to deal with that excess food and excess nutrients and excess calories. So basically, you're not just overwhelming your child's body, but you're also overwhelming their uh, their feelings and sensations, and they start losing touch with their bodies. And you're kind of, unfortunately, might be pushing them towards the edge of not listening to their bodies, which is what will cause and worsen the situation a little bit more. Now, these signals that I'm talking to you about, those cravings that they have for these nutrients, they're very subtle. They are not loud. They're not like those signals where we get when we get really hungry and we're starving and we have that growling feeling in our stomach. Those are really loud and really strong signals. But these signals that I'm talking to you about, that children have naturally in them, they're very subtle, very minimalistic. But children just instinctively feel them because they're so in tune with their body. But now when you are giving extra outside signals to them, by your pressure or speaking about it and talking about it, your pressure is louder than their natural rhythms and their natural subtle signals. So you sort of win over their body in a sense, and that makes them a bit revolted towards those foods. First of all, they hate those foods now because, first of all, your body doesn't like their body doesn't like those foods, and then they themselves psychologically start hating those foods because they don't want it, but you keep giving it to them, so they just don't like it, and they try to find any opportunity they can to avoid those. And then it's no more about food at that point. So it's no more about listening to what their body wants, no more about what they're craving for. It's all about the power struggle. So it's all about, how am I going to outsmart my mom or dad, or how am I going to outbeat my mom and dad in this? Because now it's no more about that. It's all about how they feel and what they feel towards it. And that's what it comes to. Now, I just want you to think about this a little bit. Most of you are probably mothers or ladies, but even if your father's here, you're welcome. This is just an example, but say that someone comes in, someone who's close to you and lives with you maybe, tells you, okay, and say you've been thinking about it, you've been wanting to do it for a while, but then someone tells you, you know what, you should lose weight, you should think about losing weight. Say they keep repeating it over and over and over, and even though you might have wanted to lose weight, but after enough times that you hear it, you just get stubborn. Like, even if you're not a stubborn person, you might just get, first of all, annoyed with that, but then you also don't want to do it now after this point, because now you feel like if you do it, they'll think you're doing it for them, but you actually wanted to do it in the first place anyway, but just because someone's telling you that you have to lose weight, and you're like, why should I do it? Why should I do it for them? You know how it happens? Like, it happens for me sometimes too. If someone keeps telling me, I think you should go to the gym more often, or you should go to the gym, and the first time I'll be fine, yeah, sure, I want to do it. Second time I'll be like, yeah, maybe I will. And if they keep repeating it over and over, I just get frustrated, and now I don't even want to do it anymore. No one that I know would say, yes, honey, sure, I'll do that for you. No one does that, right? Most people will be like, yeah, I want to. And then over time, you just don't want to because you just get frustrated. and angry about the whole process. Like, why do you even bother me? Now I don't even want to do it. So that's a natural instinct. You know, we all have that. Everybody feels that. So the same thing's kind of happening with your child, because you are saying I don't want over and over, and now they just become stubborn about it. They just like, I don't want it anymore. Um, so the thing is that children have very, very little control in their lives. We are pretty much controlling almost everything about them, you know, from what school they should go to, what city we should live in, from, you know, all the rules that we have in the house, from what clothes they should wear. All, you know, we have so many rules and so many things around them, and children have very little control in their life. But the control they have, um, that the complete control they have, if it's anything, it's about food. So if a child just doesn't want to eat, he or she can just choose not to eat. They can punish you or threaten you by just not eating, because they know that that's one way that you will get flustered, because that's their way out. That's so any eating behavior is usually a communication from a child. It's their way of telling you or indicating to you in one way or the other how they feel. So you want to pick up on that. They usually do take out their frustrations and anger over food, and they use it as a leverage or a punishment against you. If they get frustrated about something, they will either, it depends again on if your child is eating too much or too little. But if they're eating too little, then they will act like they're going to starve, because they want you to listen to them in their way. And then the other thing also happens, if your child is eating too much and you're trying to restrict their intake, then they will find a way to eat behind your back, because they know you won't let them eat. So they will take it out on food, and food is a very easy thing to control. Our eating is one of the few things we have complete control over, especially for children. So that's really where they will take their frustrations out at. Now, this is one, well, this is just a stock image, but this reminds me of one of my clients who came to me with a child who was about 8 years old, I guess. Yeah, I believe he was 8 years old. And, you know, it was a struggle, because the mom was worried, was complaining to me that, you know, her child is not eating his vegetables and he's only eating junk food, too much junk food, especially at school. And, you know, she was trying to restrict him from, and there was a lot of tension. So when they came to me, the child was exactly like this child sitting here in the corner. He was frustrated. He was looking down. He didn't concentrate. He wasn't listening to anything. And the mom kept telling him, hey, listen, this is all about you. This is all for you. You have to listen to her. So the mom, before coming to me, she already told me that this is my situation. I want you to tell my child to start eating this and this, because because he doesn't listen to me, but he'll listen to you because you are an authority figure. So that was her mindset when she came to me. So I listened to the whole story. I did an interview of the child. I did the interview of the mother. I went through their entire growth chart, and you know, it was a process. And when we started doing the intervention, um, I told her, my suggestion for her was just take a few steps back, just lay off a little bit. Your child will come around. He will come around. And all of a sudden, the power changed. The mom became like the child, and the child became like the mom, and the child was like, yay, see, mom, I told you. And then he got completely happy and excited to be there, and he thought that I was taking his side, and then his mom thought that I was, you know, I wasn't taking her side. Where it's not about sides, it was about what is real and what's not, and what works and what doesn't. So even for you, I'm all this that I'm saying, I don't mean it to criticize or blame. I'm not saying that your parenting style is wrong or what you're doing is wrong, but I'm just trying to show you that there are other ways to go around this. You need to take a step back, because sometimes you're too close to your situation. You know, you're too passionate about your child. You're too passionate about that you are not able to see the bigger picture. If you take a few steps back or come in a shoe like my shoe, I would be able to see something much more differently than you would probably be seeing because you're so close to the situation. So my suggestion for you is just take a few steps back and just look and be critical, look at it critically and see if there's something like this going on. Are you maybe pushing your child towards something that you're trying to avoid? It's possible that's happening. I'm not saying it's happening, but I want you to start being more careful about it and more look at it at a more critical angle. Now, the truth is that trying to get children to eat more will make them eat less, and trying to get your children to eat less will always make them eat more. That's just their biology, that's their system of doing things, and then it's also psychological. And then trying to get children to eat certain foods makes them avoid them and revolted by those foods. And that's why the extreme finicky eater that I mentioned above was, or earlier was, that they eat from a very short list of acceptable foods, and that list keeps getting smaller and smaller. And that's because you forcing or trying to feed them that thing, they get revolted by it, and that's why they hate those foods and they stop accepting foods. And also they get upset in the presence of those foods. Now, also putting up with negative behavior, hoping that maybe they'll eat, usually never works. Instead, they do behave worse, and eating still doesn't get better. And that's why you see a lot of children who have tantrums. The more you try to control their behavior, the more tantrums they'll put. It's unfortunate, but this happens with children. It almost always backfires. Everything we try to do for our child, it usually backfires, unfortunately. Over time, these habits and these behaviors, that the forcing and the force feeding and all that bribing and stuff, this eventually over time becomes a dependence. So over time, your child starts not relying on their own instincts and own sensations, but to outside stimulation, which is usually you. So they'll depend on you to provide controls around their eating. So that's why you see a lot of children who have difficult time eating away from home, and especially at school. Some children eat really okay at home, but not so much at school. And that's because they are so used to you guiding them and telling them what they should eat and what they should not eat. And they're so used to that now they're depending on you to provide those controls, provide those guidance and guidelines, and not their body. So they stop listening to that whole body. Remember the whole calcium thing I talked to you about? They stop understanding what the body is trying to ask for it or crave, those subtle signals. They stop hearing them and they start depending on you. And that's why a lot of children have a lot of difficulty eating outside of home when you are not present, because they just don't know what to do anymore, because they've lost that understanding. And this happens over time. This actually happens to us too. We've grown dependent over time on other stimulation. We probably ourselves might have gone through these phases where our parents might have tried to trick us or persuade us to eat, and we end up, we've generally lost touch with our own signals and satiety and feelings of hunger and fullness. And once you lose that dependence, psychologists say that when you start becoming dependent on something, so it might be other controls like outside controls, then it's easier for you to have more dependency. So once you have a habit of depending on things outside of your body, then you keep being more and more dependent on other things as well. So that's why a lot of people have emotional eating or night eating issues, because they become dependent on food, and they depend on mood and emotions for eating, and not on your body's needs for that time. So a lot of adults also end up eating obviously out of other reasons outside of what your body actually physically needs, like the nutrients. And once you get dependent on something else, then there's a lot of media out there who are training children and people to buy their products, to eat their junk foods. And that's what's and if you're not listening to your body, then you're listening to those ads, you get influenced by all those things. And that's why people who end up adults who do end up coming to me, they have issues like obesity, diabetes, heart disease, and all these conditions which result from being dependent on outside stimulation and emotions instead of your actual biology and chemistry. Hope that makes some sense. This also leads to a worse situation when there's eating disorders like anorexia, bulimia, binge eating disorders, anxiety, depression. All of these come from outside dependence. And this is why a lot of recommendations today on weight control or even gaining weight are towards not about portion control anymore, about what nutrients or what calories you need, but more so about the mindfulness of how you're eating and becoming more in tune with your hunger and satiety signals. So that's kind of why. So bringing it all back to your child, what I'm trying to say is this is a good opportunity for you to optimize your child's natural tendencies, natural abilities, and to instill good habits in your child. It shouldn't be about nutrients, because like I said, their body and your body will figure out how to get the nutrients it needs. It shouldn't be about nutrients anymore, because you don't know what nutrients they need. The body does know that. So what you need to be doing is just having everything ready, but let the body do its job, which it's supposed to do. So that's sort of what you need to do. And other example I wanted to give you, I met this lady um, once, and she told me about how her mother used to make her eat peas, and she hated peas, but her mother used to make her not leave the table until she finished her entire peas. And this happened all the time. So she used to hate peas. She still remembers, she's a grown up now, but she still remembers how her mother made her sit 3 or 4 hours just to finish those peas, and she wasn't allowed to leave the table. So the moment she grew up and she left the house, she never looked at peas, she never thought about peas, and she hates peas. And she promised herself that she'll never eat those peas again. And she promised she'll never even give her children peas, and never feed them peas. So basically, she hates peas. At the end of the day, that's all she remembers from her childhood. She's like, I'm never gonna eat peas again. Never gonna have my children eat peas again. So you don't want your child to become someone like that. You want them to learn eating habits. So you want to instill in them eating habits that they can explore and learn on their own. It's okay if they're not going to have maybe broccoli for the rest of their life, but they'll get similar nutrients from spinach or from kale or some other nutrients and fruits that so it's okay for a child to not like a certain food, but you don't want them to be revolted by foods that they'll never ever try it. Maybe down the line they will want to try it. But if you keep the pressure on, they'll just never, ever, ever try it. And they'll hate it. And it's just, you're just leading them to that path where it just doesn't end. They'll just hate it. And there'll be another thing they'll hate over that. And they'll just never try other foods. And a lot of children actually learn to outgrow all their eating problems. Many children grow up and start eating better, even if they're very finicky and very picky. So, for example, the example I gave you earlier about my brother who used to just eat cucumbers and nothing else. He now he's grown up. He's married. He has a daughter, and thank God, she is not picky at all. And even he when he moved out of the house, he lived in a dorm, and he had no other option but to start eating more foods. So he once he left the house, the comforts of his home, the comforts of his mom, he just started eating a variety of foods because that's he had to survive, right? He couldn't afford to not he couldn't afford to be picky at that point because now he just had to survive. He had to figure out how to fend for himself. He lived with his cousins. No one is going to put up with his tantrums. I mean, until he was at home, his mom would put up with his tantrums and would only give him what he wanted. But once he left the home, no one was there. He didn't have that leverage. Um, so he had no other option but to eat. And now that he is married, he's trying all these different variety of foods like sushi and all that stuff. And in the beginning, he wouldn't even eat rice. So I mean, it was a big jump, and that's because he just knew he had to do it. And his wife is a big foodie, and she keeps encouraging him to try all these foods, and that's when he did it. So for a mother like yourself, I'm assuming you want to see all those good behaviors now in them. You want to see them enjoying the foods now and not later on when they're married, or maybe because of someone else. You probably want it because they should do it naturally, and I would assume you want to see them do all of that now rather than later, and you be the reason for them doing it. So that's sort of why I am giving you all these situations, so you understand where I'm going with this. And children, just so you know, are not able to starve themselves. They just don't. Our bodies, most children, almost all children, unless there are special needs, but even for them, most of them, they're just not able to starve themselves. So they they know they can get away with it at home because they know they can. Um, you care enough for them to not let them starve, but they aren't able to. So you should allow them to experiment and learn. So once the pressure is off, eating does slowly get better. It may look in the beginning that it's getting worse, and it usually feels like, oh my God, he's eating all that junk food that he's not supposed to, or he or she's not eating any of those vegetables. But over time, and very soon, actually, once the pressure is off, they start getting better and better. In the beginning, it feels like it's getting a lot worse, but it doesn't. It gets better. It's that curve, that thing that children go through to make it worse before it gets better. For a child, it's always like it gets worse before it always gets better, but it does get better. I have so many examples, so many scenarios where I've seen parents and children get thing, and they start eating, enjoying foods and meal times. So you will definitely enjoy your meal times. So one of the assignment I have for you to actually see things happening is, first of all, allow yourself, or allow your child at least, to feel that they are in control of their eating from now on. Like, they have to feel that now it's their job and it's their decision. Most children want you want them to start feeling that it was their choice to try that vegetable, not my mom's. I'm not doing it because my mom wants it to. It's just because it's my decision. And when they feel it's their decision, they start taking more. They they try to explore and do their own thing with it, and you want to let that happen. So I'm going to give you 7 do's and don'ts before I end today, so that you can start using these tactics at home to start seeing results. So one of the first things, which kind of goes without saying, I've already said this enough times, but what you don't want to do is don't force or coax your child to eat, and don't hand feed them. Instead, what you want to do is try to take a laid back approach and allow them to feed themselves. Might be a little hard in the beginning. I get it. I know you've been doing this for a while, and it's very hard for a lot of parents to actually take a step back, but it will help. I'm honest with you. It will definitely help. You also don't want to make special meals. From now on, stop making those extra meals and extra dinners. And I know you might be worried. Okay, how do we get them to eat? So the do is you offer them variety and balance. So you're offering them at least foods from two or three different food groups. So maybe one, maybe for example, a fruit, let's say an orange, a sandwich, and a boiled egg, or something like that. Just have two or three different food groups present, so that if your child doesn't eat one food, they'll eat the other. And I know you might be thinking that my child is just going to eat that one food and not the other, right? You'll probably be thinking, oh, he or she will just eat one of those things. And so the don't number 5 is don't panic if they're eating only one food. And that's because most foods have similar nutrients. So fruits and vegetables have almost the exact same nutrients. So if your child is only eating one fruit and they're not eating any vegetable, they're still getting all the nutrients, all the vitamins that they need, the iron and everything else that they need, that the body can absorb. So it's okay if they're not having one or the other, as long as they're having anything. So if you're getting a wholesome nutrient, wholesome food somewhere in your child's diet, and they're able to eat at least one of them, you're fine. Even if it's just a bread and butter, your child is still getting the nutrients from that bread and the so yes, you want to, has vitamin D in it too, and a lot of stuff. So you are getting vitamins and nutrients from any foods. So that's one thing that you don't want to panic. So that's why we have that 5th rule, where you don't want to panic if they're only eating one of the foods from the 3 or 4 foods that you have. So also, just so you have a good idea of what it takes to get a child to look at a new food till they actually finally swallow it, it takes a couple of steps. Now, even if you reach the first step, it's progress. So the first step is that a child looks at the food or asks questions. And I know a lot of children, especially those who are extremely picky, they're not even comfortable to be around this, in the presence of a new food. So being comfortable enough to even ask for food is progress. It usually, just getting to number 1 is going to take a little time, because once the pressure is off, for them to start getting comfortable to even ask for a question, to be even in the presence of foods, is a progress. So you want to get your child to at least that stage in the beginning. That's when you know you are making progress. So the moment they ask a question or look at the food without saying yuck or being angry about it or anything, that's when you know that you have started seeing some progress. So they have to be comfortable enough, first of all, to be asking for those foods. And the comfort comes in you laying off and letting them explore it, okay? So the second step, they'll ask for it on their plate. So to get this step in place, you have this other 6th don't that I want you to know is don't make their plate for them, and then second of all, don't make them finish what's on their plate. Do you remember the story of that lady who ate her peas and who hated her peas? That's exactly why you don't want to do that. If you make your child finish what's on their plate, they're not even going to be comfortable enough to put it on their plate. They'll not even put it on their plate in the first place. And you want them to eventually explore and like those foods, right? So you want to be able to let them put that food in their plate, and that's another progress. So if you have that rule right now in your house, please do break that rule and allow them to allow them to leave things on their plate if they have to, as long as they'll start exploring eventually. And this will happen. It just takes a little bit more time. In the beginning, it'll take time, and then once the habit is instilled, it's just easy, and it becomes really smooth sailing from there. Okay, so the third step is that they'll put it in their mouth, and a lot of parents feel very happy and excited that they willingly actually took the food and actually put it in their mouth, and parents are extremely ecstatic about it. But unfortunately, they swish it around, but then they spit it out. And this is an important step. A lot of parents get really angry that the child, took all this progress, and then now he's he or she's going backwards, but they're not going backwards. This is an important step, because especially if a child has sensory or motor issues, this is very important, especially textural issues. They need to be able to test and feel the food until they feel comfortable. So it has to take a couple of tries for them to feel comfortable enough to even swallow it. And if you have been going to a therapist, feeding therapist especially, you will see that that's what they're doing. They're trying to get your child more familiar with the textures and the flavors and all that stuff, so that this is an important step. And even if your child spits it out, that's still progress. You know you're doing a very good job because you've reached the third level. And the last step is that they finally swallow it, and that's the best feeling ever, I'm sure. And it can take days between these steps, and it can take months, and it really depends on you and your ability to relieve the pressure. And it also depends on your child's ability to trust that you have now changed and things are going to be more relaxed and more about them, and they are in control. So once the child trusts that that's going to stay for a while, that's when you start seeing more and more progress, and faster and faster progress. The seventh and last do or don't that I have for you, it's a do, is that keep offering rejected foods. So a lot of parents, what they do is they once the child rejects a food or says he doesn't like it or spit it out, they stop offering that food. But that's the last thing you want to do. It takes an average of at least 20 different exposures before your child will even try a food. And that exposure um, doesn't necessarily be, in their plate or in their mouth. It should be in their presence. They should be able to see that same food in different ways, at different times, in different styles, to be able to be comfortable around that food. So let me give you a time frame of what this will look like. So for example, if you offer spinach once every month, then it could take about 2 years before your child will actually start to eat that spinach. And if you offer spinach once every week, then it will take them about 4 months or so before they actually start to try it and eat it. So the key is that you keep exposing it every couple of, it depends on how fast you want them to eat these foods. The more often you expose it, but obviously don't ask them to eat it or even try, just expose them. The exposure will make them comfortable over and over, and over time they will one day just grab it and put it in their plate, or maybe ask about it or something. There's always these 4 steps that have to go through, but they have to be comfortable enough to even get to that stage, and that depends on your ability to present these foods in different and comfortable ways. So I know I've talked to you about a lot of stuff. I've given you a lot of information, too much to absorb. I have given you a worksheet so that you can follow through. Even after this workshop is over, you will still be able to use that and maybe hopefully answer some questions that you may not have been able to answer while I was going along. But I want you to answer this question. Can you imagine yourself sitting, taking a laid back approach and enjoying foods with your child? Can you imagine not having to feed them or get them to eat by talking about it and just being laid back and relaxing? Can you imagine that? Can you imagine cooking just one single meal for your entire family and just have maybe 1 or 2 wholesome foods that you don't necessarily have to cook, but just have to cook one single meal for your entire family? Imagine what it would feel like if you saw your child willingly try a different varieties and types of foods. And what it would feel like if your child started eating better at home and had less and less mealtime behaviors and tantrums. Can you imagine all of that? If you said yes to any of these, then let's take a journey together, because I want to invite you to help you transition your child from where you're at right now to the end goal, which is hopefully to have them eat a variety of foods. So I have developed a training course similar to the stuff that I talked to you about, but it's going to be a lot more detailed, like the do's and don'ts, like I told you. But I have a much more comprehensive plan that people have gone through that has worked. So it's made specifically for parents like you. It is a step by step process of exactly what you need to do and what you should be able to do to help your child eat better. So let me show you a little bit about what this course looks like so you have an idea and then you can make your decision. So this course is called Raise Healthy Eaters, and it has about 5 different modules, and each module has between 2 to 6 video training guides. It has lectures and lessons that you go through. So the first one is specifically on understanding growth of your child. So this is a time when I encourage you to actually call up your pediatrician or your family physician and ask them to send your child's growth charts and medical history to you. If you're living in the US or Canada, you can do that. If you request growth charts and health records, your doctor has to give it to you. So I would definitely say that you get them, because that way you will be able to see your own child's growth. And I'll help you, show you what you want to look for in the growth charts, where basically show you what the different numbers mean if in the trends. I'll give you a better insight into that in this course. I also show you, which is the best part, which a lot of people have said that the best part is the solutions, the module number 3 and 4, which is exactly the step by step. I go into the when to feed your children, where to feed them, what exactly you need to feed them, and how to feed them. So there's a lot of resources that you will absolutely love in this, because based on your time frame, you don't have to finish it all of a sudden. It's really up to you, but it gives you a step-by-step guide. So this is actually one of the things one of the students who took this course said about this. I know there's a lot here to read, but so she basically has said that it was new for her to learn that crying is a late stage of hunger. She always thought that it was the only way to know, and that this course completely changed her perspective. She also said that it really helped her know that now that she can set a schedule and not be worried about when her child is hungry. And that's one of the things that she is now going to be able to cross off of her list of things to be worried about. Now, so what you will create from the plan that I have is a step-by-step process. So I have 14 rules for you. So each rule corresponds to each stage. So rule number 1 would you would start on day 1. So you would start instilling that rule in your life, in your family routine from day 1. And then rule number 2, you'll start doing that from week number 2, and so on and so forth, until you reach all the 14 rules that I have for you. I also have a lot of cool and amazing cheat sheets and words and phrases that you can use, that you can stick around your house, that will help you make the plan and those rules followed better. I'll also give you a better understanding of exactly which foods you want to have at the with your child, and I'll give you a detailed description of each food group and what the nutrients are, how you can grab them, what is a wholesome food. I'll give you all the details that I kind of touched on today, but there's more in depth and much more detailed training that you will be able to implement immediately in your life, in your family feeding life. Also, the thing I have for you is I'll tell you what to do about cookies and ice creams and candies, because I know a lot of parents feel like my child will still eat these cookies and ice creams and cookies and all that stuff. So I'll show you exactly how to present it in a way that it is not going to make them overeat these things. So I have a lot of guidelines around these. I'm sure you'll find a lot of value in it. And then the last 2 modules, especially the last one, is a problem solving and troubleshooting. a little similar to what I told you, but it's a little different because I go into each issue one at the time, one at a time. So the weight issue, I'll go through that. I'll give you talk about the finicky eater. I also have a section for special needs. So what I do is show you a few videos so you can see what it looks like in reality and how in practice how it actually looks like, so you see what's actually happening, and you can go with the rules and see what parents are doing right and what they're doing wrong, and that kind of helps you in your own daily life as well. So another student of mine who took this course said that so this student had a child who has some sensory and textural issues. She's a finicky eater, and she was prematurely born. So she's about 5 or 6 months behind of her actual age. So she said that this course taught me how to take a step back as a parent, especially around mess. And she said that she used to cringe a lot and would only stick to what worked. But now, and she was scared to try and introduce new foods, especially rice. But through this course, she learned how to let her child do her own thing and give her rice for the first time. She get a feel of the texture, and which was completely new for her. And it was amazing for her to see how her child, started experimenting with the rice and everything. So that was something amazing result that one of my students had. I give you a Q&A at the end of each model so that you can test yourself, see if you've learned this, if you understand the concepts. If you haven't, you can always go back and retouch on them. I also have a group discussion, which is a private group discussion where you can share with other students your problems and issues and your struggles, and also get some feedback from me. You can also send pictures and videos or anything that you feel you need extra training for. So this is going to be a very close-knit group where we can help each other out. It's going to be like a forum, but I also offer Facebook private group, which is only for people who are enrolled in this course. So it's called Raise Healthy Eaters VIP. That's where where I'll do live Q&A sessions to help you see where you're at your goals. And and one more thing is that when you do join the group, we will look for an accountability partner for you. So someone who can be over your shoulder, someone maybe someone closer to you, depending on how many members we have. But I'm trying to keep it an intimate group, so we have very few members so that we can actually develop a good relationship with each other and hold each other accountable. So a lot of times parents find that because they're so close to the situation, sometimes they feel they're doing everything right, but things are not working. But then if someone else from the outside looks at it with fresh eyes, they have more say. So having an accountability partner really helps a lot of students. So this is definitely something that will be worth it. It's going to be completely private for only the ones who are enrolled in this course, and you'll get complete lifetime access to the entire lecture and modules. Like I said, I have a small section for special needs, but I'm planning on expanding that. So you will get either free or completely discounted upgrades and updates to any new lessons and lectures that I add to this course. So I do have a section for special needs, but I'll be adding more to that. But definitely this is going to be important for you if you are thinking about feeding your child who has sensory issues or who is on the spectrum or very sensitive. You will also get 24/7 access to me over email for at least 6 months. So you can email me, shoot me any issues you have, and I'll be there for you. So generally, this brings me to what this is all worth. If you would come to me directly and we did a Skype session, and if I had to take you from where you're at to where you want to go, it would take about at least first the assessment with you and your child. That takes 2 days at least, and then we have 4 other meetings and and email support. So if you had to go through all of that, you would be paying me $1,060, which is, I know, a little stretch, but that's how much it takes. But because you're here and you've joined this workshop and you've stuck around for this long, so I have like I promised, I have a fast action bonus for you. So the entire thing is going to be worth only 4 payments of 33 for you. So the entire course is going to be just $33 4-time payment, or if you want to pay it in full, it's 120. And the original price is actually 340, but I reduced this price just for you for this specific workshop, and this is only available for the next week. And I will be taking this off by the end of next week. So if you are looking for guidance, then I would definitely encourage you to do this, take this on. Another student of mine said, I was told many things to get my picky child or my picky daughter to eat, but it never really worked and never helped me. I learned in this course that it's not about the food, but it's the lifestyle. By following the step-by-step plan, that you will stop cooking separate meals and stop using the hard way. And the best thing of all, this plan will make life easy and save time. So this is a parent who has who has 2 daughters. One is 4-year-old and one is 6-year-old, and they're both. One of them is extremely picky, and she has to make 2 different meals for both of those children, and then a separate meal for her family. So she definitely saw that this made life easy and definitely saves a lot of time in not having to spend so much time in the kitchen. Also, I just want to let you know there is a 30-day money back guarantee. No questions asked. First of all, I thought I would do it. I would have you finish at least 1 or 2 modules so that you start seeing progress before you say that you want money back. But I'm pretty sure you will find a lot of value in it. So that's why I decided no questions asked. You can take this course, test it out for 30 days. If you like it, that's great. If you don't, back and ask me to refund you, and I'll give you 100% your money back. So one other comment from the student I have said that this is one resource that I'm going to hold on to for every stage of my life. And I know it will be, I know I'll be referring back to it over and over again, which is great because that's exactly what I intend. I want you to have this resource for you for the rest of your life. So basically what you're getting is 5 modules, 20 lectures, a lifetime access to upgrades and updates. The entire course will be with you for the rest of your life as a resource, as a guide, whatever stage you're at with your child. You also get group discussions and forums and private VIP access to a private Facebook group where you get an accountability partner to look over your shoulder and help you make any change, help you evaluate you and your feeding relationship with your children. You will also get 24/7 access and support from me. And obviously, you'll have a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you are looking forward to trying this course out, please go ahead, test this course out. You need to go to this link. It's www.modest.nutrition.teachable.com. So that's the link. So like I said, the $340 is the regular price, but your price for this week is 4 payments of $33. So please go on this link. I'll also put the link at the end of the video, and I'll send you a link on email as well, just so that you have all of that. And yeah, I'm going to open the floor up to questions. So please let me know if you got anything out of this webinar or this workshop, and if you feel differently, and if there's anything you are going to change, please let me know. Or if you have any questions, please I open the floor up to you. Just to get you started, one of the most common questions I usually get is how long can I expect to see results? So, ideally, if you follow the step by step plan, the rules number 1 through 14, depending on how soon you're able to follow the rules, maybe you are already a few steps ahead. Some families are amazing and they are a few steps ahead. It can be really fast. It can happen within a month if you are steady with the rules that I have there for you. So that's one question off the back. But if you have any other questions, please type that down and I'll answer that for you. But if even if you're not going to get the course, if you want to just check the link out and just see what there is, what's to offer, there are a few previews that you can go through. There is a self pre-assessment so that you can, before you even take the course, you know where you're at. And then by the end of the course, you can retake the test again and see where you've reached, because that really helps in seeing change and seeing progress. So I would definitely recommend that. So if any of you want to get the worksheet, just go on the link below. It is www.modestnutrition.com/workshop, WORK shop, workshop. Um, and that should take you to the page where you can put your email address in and you'll get your worksheet immediately. Thank you. So I'm going to end the chat here. Thank you for joining me. It was a pleasure. And if you have any questions, you can always feel free to email me. I am on email support all day, all the time. So let me know if you have any questions and I'll get back to you on that. Thank you so much. Have a good day.